Committee to order on June 18th at 7 p.m. January 18th at 7 p.m. I'll read the Douglas Mission Statement for Public Schools. The Douglas Public Schools offer a diverse learning experience that meet the academic, social, physical, and emotional needs of all of our students. We provide a safe, supportive, and challenged learning environment in which students may achieve success and personal growth. Decisions are made in the best interest of our students. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'd like to call our student representatives to come up, Tia Olette and Torin Gunta.
Good evening. My name is Torin Genta, and I'm with Tia Willette, and we are 7th grade student council members at the middle school. We have not attended one of your meetings since September. There have been many great events going on at the middle school so far this year. During the November month, the student council sponsored a food drive to help support the St. Denis Food Pantry in time for Thanksgiving. The winning homeroom earned an extra recess. We collected 2 carloads to help families in our community.
We also help with a district-wide snowflake drive to help those in our community who need a little extra help. We've raised over $1,500 in gift cards and cash for this holiday season. In December, we organized a Spirit Week with dress-up days, trivia in the cafeteria, and we ended the week with a homeroom dodgeball tournament. We also sponsored our first dance for all middle school students, which was a success. Our fall sports have finished and winter sports, such as basketball, indoor track, and cheer, are underway. Our last home games for basketball are tomorrow at 3:30 and 4:30.
During the course of these 2 months, each grade has had community meetings with Mr. O'Brien and the teachers. A meeting about lockdown procedures was very helpful for the whole student body. The directions were clear and helped students understand the importance of these drills. Second quarter is closing tomorrow, and report cards will be issued next week. Students are working hard in all of their classes.
The 8th graders learned about the voting process and civics during the week of the midterm elections. They also had a fun unit on the Day of the Dead in Spanish and a science project about liquid rainbow stacking. A cell lab in science was also something that took place. In Spanish, they got to watch the World Cup, then got a test on it. In English, they worked on a crime scene investigation where they had to figure out who hung the holiday lights.
The 7th graders finished the novel Ground Zero in ELA and completed a yeast bioreactor in science. In addition, we did a cookie project in math class. We put on the play, A Christmas Carol for the grade. Now we are doing a large volcano and earthquake project in science.
The 6th graders completed a Veterans Day project where they wrote cards to the veterans. Also, in science, they are learning about minerals. They also completed a Douglas history project about our town and what made its history. In Miss Martinson's reading class, they completed posters about 5 different themes. In history, they also made a shoebox diorama of the state of their choice. In math, they are learning factors and multiples. They are also learning about the 4 types of sentences in writing. Coming up, we have a Custodian Appreciation Week planned, a homeroom competition leading up to our annual Winter Olympics that will take place the Friday before February break.
Within these past few weeks, the class officers have been working very hard on a project to beautify a rock near the middle school's front entrance. The rock is called the Signature Stone. The 8th grade students have signed this rock individually to make their mark on the school during their last year of middle school. The class officers will also be recognizing the surrounding area, which includes brand new flowers and plants, along with a small plaque to commemorate the area. This will be a yearly tradition that all upcoming 8th graders will participate in. An instruction manual will be shared with the class officers when elected in years to come.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, ladies.
Thank you.
Any questions?
What do you guys have planned for the week of Winter Carnival? Or is that to be? Oh, the Winter Olympics, I apologize, Winter Olympics. Or is that coming? Is that to be determined?
We have Look It, Game Kit, Cahoots, Ned the Museum, Four Corners, and Dodgeball.
That's awesome.
Sweet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Thank you.
I open the floor up for public comment. Is anyone here for public comment? Thank you all for coming. Moving on to, do we have any old business?
We do not.
Moving on to new business.
So we'll start with quick overview, preliminary FY '24 budget. First off, kudos to the leadership team and to Mrs. Keegan, who've been working tirelessly probably the past 2 months on this. Process started back in October with Courtney and her staff moving the salary master from FY '23 to FY '24. Salaries make up 85% of our budget, so that was a massive lift for Courtney and her staff to do that. The end of November, we gave the principals and the members of the leadership team their budget sheets, basically for them to fill out what are the need for supplies, materials, resources, books, textbooks, technology, fertilizer, air filters, so on and so forth. That was due back to Courtney's office right the week before the holiday break. Over the past, I think it's 3 weeks, we've been going back and forth with the principals. We've had 2 or 3 meetings individually and as groups to go over what they've presented. No surprise that a lot of supplies, a lot of materials have spiked tremendously in cost. So it's just looking at that. We don't want to rush the process. We want to make sure that when we present, we give you good, accurate numbers. We don't want to come here 1 week with a 20% increase, and the next week come back with a 4% increase, and the next week come back at a 25% increase. So we want to make sure we don't rush the process, and the goal right now is to do a formalized presentation to the committee on February 1, which I believe is 2 weeks from today for our presentation. So that's where we're at with the budget. Again, just a huge thank you to Courtney and her staff for working to try to pull this all together. It's been, we saw a lot of line items jump up, double and triple, and not because they asked for additional things, but just the cost of materials and resources have gone up so much in the past year that we're trying to navigate and manage all that within the budget, knowing the constraints we have from what we're gaining in money from the town. So, questions on the budget? All
Is
right.
there any, like, pending legislative funding that you know of that could be coming down, knowing that? Okay.
No.
Actually, the Chapter 70 is because we have a new governor. So DESE sent out something for us to try to figure out what the Chapter 70 funding is going to be, which is...
This administration's priorities
Yeah.
might be different than Baker's administrative priorities.
Yeah.
So,
So cherry sheets will be late. You know, as far as the
Yes.
listing, for those of you who don't know, of revenues that go to the municipality, one of them, largest being Chapter 70 funding.
Okay.
next is just an update on our bully intervention plan. This is something we've been working on since the fall. Right now, it's between a 15 and 20-page document. We've taken from a couple of different school districts, we've taken from our own internal policies, and we've tried to merge this together into one document. Just want to give the committee just some highlights of what's in this so people understand the time and the labor that's gone into it. So you have your introduction, you have your priority statements. This is a statement of definitions. What are all the different terms that we use here in schools? We take it for granted, that educational jargon that we use, but when this is going out to the public, we want them to know. There's a section in there in collaboration with families. How are we going to provide information to families? How are we going to provide professional development to families? How are we going to educate families? How are we going to report things to families? We don't want to write something that we can't execute. There's a piece in there is what's our responsibility as a leadership team. There's also a section in there about how we're going to train and do professional development for staff, not only at the beginning of the year, but throughout the course of the year. Staff need to know, and they do, how to identify, how to recognize, how to support. So we want to do that PD training in there. Then the bulk of the section is the actual piece where, what are our procedures for how we report, how we respond to bullying allegations, but also what's in there in terms of retaliation. because we want to make sure that if someone's reporting it, that they're protected as well, too. So we're going through all that, making sure the laws are covered. Hope to have that to you. I think we're reviewing it as a leadership team February 1 to present March, when we only have one meeting in March. But sometimes I have bigger eyes in my belly, and I thought we could do it quick. But once we started really looking into it and diving into it, we want to make sure we're putting together a thoughtful document, and principals have really taken a lot of ownership on it, so I appreciate their efforts in that. If you've been to the website, you've noticed that it looks a little bit different. Just a big thank you to John Calabrese, Scott, the tech department, administrative assistants, and members of the leadership team. John started this process last year. The company that we use to do our website offered a free conversion to a more modern and sleek template. I think when we looked at all the different offerings, there was something like 60 to 70 to 80 different templates to pick from. So we had to pick the template, then we had to merge all the information over, and the biggest piece of it was making sure that what we had in the old document, in the old website, merged over to the new website. So that went live right around the holiday break. So if you haven't had a chance to see that, take a look at it. But just thank you to everyone for their efforts to do that. Those of us who've done a website conversion know that it's not a quick transfer file over. So thank you to everyone for that. And then finally, just a quick update on the DESE grant. I had my kickoff meeting last week. There were over 40 districts who are part of this grant. They've allocated $3.6 million, the state to the 40 districts. This is going to impact positively over 10,000 students in the Commonwealth. So our kickoff meeting was last week, and we have our first official coaching mentoring meeting the end of this month. Part of what this is all about how we're going to integrate and bring to Douglas SEL screeners for students so that staff can have the information. And part of the introductory meetings, they want to make sure that we're very careful in what we pick out and what we use for a screener. But the other thing they want to make sure of is the data that we receive from the screener, that we can actually do something with it.
In real
And then the other piece is we have to show and demonstrate either positively or negatively what we've done with it, because as they're allocating out $3.6 million in grant funds, they want to make sure, or at least be able to talk about what impact they've had. So we have our first coaching session. It's going to be a slow process to roll it out, but just excited that we can that we have the funding to bring these screeners to our students and our staff. Questions? No. All right. And that's all I have for tonight.
Can I ask you a question that wasn't on here?
Probably, but if it's going to impact open meeting law, it might be tricky.
Just quick, where are we at with staffing?
Okay, that was the, more closely defined staffing. Across all schools?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So starting here at the high school, we have a teacher position available. I think we have a candidate who's strongly interested in the position that we're having discussions with. We're still having the struggles finding paraprofessionals and ABAs. At the middle school, I believe they're fully staffed. At the elementary school, they have advertised for, we filled a position recently, and we are advertising for a position that they're looking to fill. Again, still struggling with the ABAs and the paras. And Ms. Socha's looking for, I believe, maternity leave coverage and also ABAs and paras. Our new dean of students started the Tuesday after the break, and she's doing a great job from what I've seen so far. So
And then the elementary school special ed teacher, right? Still?
that started.
The flex one?
Oh, that one is, we're out
Okay,
actively looking.
okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else got any questions? So I know it's not part of the agenda. I know that Dr. Vera did present to us
right.
last week his superintendent revision of his goals. I know that we need to put on, probably on the calendar for the
Feb 1.
Feb 1, to figure out when we would like him to submit back to us, because with me up for re-election this year, we have to have his superintendent evaluation done before the election happens. So we're gonna have to back in some dates. So that means in March, we're probably gonna have to have the evaluation done, so I can do all of the, taking everybody's input. So let's look at calendars, and so we have that for February 1st to put on the
But
calendar.
that's when we're getting information on data, right? Also in February, March?
So right now at the elementary school and the primary school, they're doing their STARS mid-year assessments this week. They're presenting their STARS mid-year assessment, the first meeting in March.
Okay.
They just need the time to look at the data, put it together. They're presenting that in March, the first meeting. And the second meeting in March, principals are coming back to talk about their MCAS data. If you remember back in October, November, principals presented on MCAS and their action plan. They created a couple hypotheses based on the data they put together in action plan. Although we're not going to have our MCAS numbers until, Sally, the summer or next year, I want them to give an update on what they've seen or what they've implemented, what's worked, what hasn't worked, what they get in feedback for teachers. And we're also going to do NWEA data at that meeting. So those two meetings will happen in March.
So if we can just get the timeline from when they're presenting, because I would assume that everybody would like to have that data point to put into superintendent's evaluation. But being mindful of what Dr. Vera presented to us at the last meeting too, as well as the goals and objectives have to change just because of the workload of what's going on in the district. So, but that also gives Dr. Vera the opportunity to go back out to staff to make sure that we cannot slip those dates, so. Okay.
Thank you.
That's all I have there. So, moving on to the school committee and subcommittee reports, the accounts payable report.
So, I signed DHS 23-07, warrant date 12/22/02, and a total dollar amount of $1,037.99. Then there was DHS 23-08, warrant date 12/29/02, a total dollar amount of $15,000. And on warrant SCH 26/23 and 26 SCHL 23, warrant date 12/22/22 and 12/23/22. Heather signed these, but there was a total of 14, and it was for $113,018.94. Then there was 27 SCH 23 and 27 SCHL 23 on warrant date 12/29/22 and 12/30/22. 9 batches for a total dollar amount of $117,933.84. And there was no concerns on any of those.
Thanks. Now onto the consent agenda, the January 4th, 2023 meeting minutes. If nobody has any issues, I'd be looking for a motion.
I make a motion to approve the January 4th, 2023 school committee meeting minutes.
Motion made by Monique, second by? Teresa. Second by Teresa. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstain? Next one is to approve the district handbook changes regarding student discipline.
So I handed you that today, it was on top of your packets. So back in mid-October, we got an advisory from our attorney and from Department of Education, from Superintendent's Association, that the Commonwealth was changing its suspension laws. We got the advisory in mid-October, it went into effect November 8th. So a little bit about the background. Prior to November 8th, the law states that principals must exercise discretion when suspending. That was the law. Now, the new law states that they must still exercise discretion, but as you see in the second paragraph, they cannot suspend or expel a student until alternative remedies have been employed and their use and results documented. So what does that mean, just in simple terms? Going back to, let's say, hats and hoods. you go back years ago, not happening here, but just a simple example. Kids wearing a hat, teacher says, take the hat off, teacher says, no, I'm not gonna do it. It's insubordination. Your handbook might call for insubordination as a one-day suspension. That was in the past. You can no longer suspend for that. You have to go through a list of several remedies, detention, conversation, meeting with a student, and list and document all those things you've done. And maybe on the 4th, 5th, 6th time the student has done that offense again, and you can document that you've taken all these steps, at that point, you can suspend. However, if the student does something that the safety of the student, the school, is in harm's way, you do not have to go through this process, and you can move to suspension. So really what they're looking to do is, with the pandemic, they're looking to find ways to make sure kids are staying in school, and you're not suspending for offenses that we used to suspend for years ago. That went into effect on October 8th. It took everyone by surprise. It wasn't on anyone's radar. The MASS, the Superintendent's Association, has someone that sits on the legislative branch. They didn't hear anything about it. It was in mid-October. It came down, and we had 2 weeks. So, it says here you're doing a lot of things like restorative justice, you're doing things like mediation, in-school suspensions you can't use anymore. So it's a lot of things that schools are putting in place. I had the conversation with the building principals here. We were already doing a lot of this in place and not suspending, looking to keep kids in school. We've had to tweak some of the things we've done, but the ability to suspend for minor infractions without documenting multiple steps that you've taken in the past is no longer available.
Any questions?
I think we're fortunate to have a district like we have, because I know, I'm just thinking of like a district that's very south of here, that teachers just, they don't get respect. And so that's tough. But again, like just going to the suspension, I don't necessarily think is the greatest thing either. But it's just, I think it'll be interesting. But you said it doesn't really impact here anyway, so too much.
In the conversations with Mr. O'Brien, Mrs. Bennett, and Mr. Vega, we already tried all those alternatives before we moved to suspension. We were using in-school suspension a lot as a deterrent. We don't have that ability anymore unless we can document. But we're already doing a lot of these things.
So the in-school suspensions can be used if there's like repeated offenses despite interventions that
Suspensions
were
can
tried.
be used for offenses, insubordination, cell phone violations. I'm trying to think of some other things that were in the handbook. Teresa, help me out here. What are some suspendable offenses we had? Smoking, vaping.
Vaping, yes, and
all those things that became automatic, that were automatic one-day suspensions. You can't do any longer unless you can show that you've documented various interventions. So it takes, you catch the kid with a vape pen. That used to be possession, 1 day suspension on the first offense. You can't do that any longer. You have to put them through a smoking cessation program, have them sit in the office and do research on it.
Write a paper on it.
Write a paper on it. Meet with the counseling staff or the school adjustment counselor for 2 weeks, 3 times a week to discuss addiction or vaping or the issues. Then after you've documented all that, if it's still happening, then you can do a suspension.
And there's no differentiation between in-school and out-of-school.
They do not.
It's just a suspension.
It's just a suspension.
So like, let's say that I'm vaping in the bathroom and I get caught, and then my friend Jennifer is doing the same thing. Jennifer's sitting in the office and she's, writing a paper. I, on the other hand, am getting suspended. Like, so, I'm just playing devil's advocate. I was just curious about this part. So, like, how do I know that Jennifer is being treated equal like me? How do I know that, like, she already went through these 4 steps? Like, can people ask
No.
those
So we don't share
questions?
student discipline. We don't share results of discipline with anyone other than the student and their family. What we do have to do when we do a suspension letter is we would write, were you the one who got suspended, or you weren't the one that got suspended?
I don't remember. I got suspended.
You got suspended, so we would write a letter to Mom and Dad Mulder that said, "Dear Mom and Dad, This is Julie's fourth offense getting caught vaping in the bathroom. The first time on this date we did. The second time on this date we did. The third time on this date we did. Fourth time on this date we did. Therefore, at this juncture of time, we are moving towards a one-day suspension. So you would do that. The youngster who just got the first offense and sitting in the office wouldn't know how many times you've been caught unless you share that with them, but it wouldn't come from the school.
I just have, but there is things that are on the district accountability data in terms of suspensions. Like, there is general data that people can look at for suspensions.
Correct.
though. So it might not be student-specific, but you can tell if people are. And, I mean, there's been kids in the Commonwealth that have gotten suspended 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, 5 days. All of a sudden, they hit the 10 days, and they're expelled from school, and they're not doing anything. So I just,
Unless they're special ed, and then we manifest.
Correct.
I couldn't even tell you the amount of them that
But
aren't.
there was a lot,
Yeah.
there were districts out there, I don't know who they were, who were using suspensions as a way
Kids out.
Get kids out.
to move kids. And a lot of the suspension laws came from that because they were pushing kids out. It was impacting the community, police got involved, and you weren't educating kids, you were just pushing off the issue. So they changed a lot of the suspension laws to make sure that schools are doing what they could do to keep kids in school and not using suspension as a way to push kids out.
And these are for fairly minor incidences as well. I mean, for the big ones, there's still 37H and a half and all that
Right,
kind of stuff.
weapons,
Right.
drugs,
Oh, yeah.
weapons,
Yeah.
drugs,
Clearly.
violence.
Clearly, yeah.
You can do it. If you show a documented pattern of things, you can do things. And my 6 years as an assistant principal, my 10 years as a principal, kids always found something new that we never
Yes.
thought of or came up with that we would never think to add in the handbook, but happened to become suspendable offenses for whatever reason.
I mean, in all honesty, this law has already been passed and implemented, so.
It is what it is.
it's-
Yeah,
it's-
exactly.
You know, end game is, it needs to be in the handbook.
Correct.
Exactly.
Just an update. So, be looking for a motion?
I move to approve the changes to 37H and 3/4B regarding student discipline.
Motion made by Teresa, seconded by
Julie?
Julie. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Thanks.
Thank you.
Moving on to the school business and operations manager report. So this evening, I have just the ones that were requested from administrators again. And 4 out of the 6 are for a training, as you can see, for nurses. So they're all done at the same time, and 2 others that were requested too by administrators. And that's it. Know if anybody had any questions?
Anyone would have any questions? I'd be looking for a motion.
I move to approve the reclassification and transfers documented in FY 2024 budgetary transfers number 6 at tonight's school committee meeting, January 18th, 2023.
Motion made by Teresa, seconded by?
Second.
Seconded by Monique. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Okay, that's good.
Thank you.
Do we have any topics that we did not anticipate?
Other than the picture,
Other than the picture that we have to do tonight?
Everybody's here.
Everybody's here, so we know, Lauren, you'll be excited. So I'd be looking for a motion to adjourn, and then we'll take our picture.
It's 7:29 or?
I make a motion to adjourn the school committee meeting, January 18th, 2023, at 7:29.
Motion made by Monique, seconded by? Me. Seconded by Beth. All those in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? All right, thank you.